What is going on, everybody, and welcome. This is episode number 57 of RizzoCast. I'm Steven Rissotto, and we are joined today with a man who played in parts of 12 seasons as a big league reliever for the Padres, Astros, White Sox, Giants, Braves, Brewers, not in order, uh, and now works with the Water Mission, which works to provide access to safe water in developing countries and disaster areas. Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Stephen. I appreciate you having me on your show.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I know you're a busy guy with everything going on, but the 2021 baseball season is underway, of course. Are you still watching? Are you still keeping up with everything that's going on? Like, what's kind of your status right now with baseball?
Baseball for me, I like to stay in touch with what's going on. I read the news pretty much every day. Still have a handful of guys, buddies that are playing. Most of them are coaching or managing, but it's nice to just, keep your thumb on the pulse. But I usually don't sit down and actually watch baseball. I'll watch highlights or I'll have a game on, in the background. It's more of a comforting thing for me than anything. I've watched my fair share of games, and so I usually wait till playoffs. October is when I watch baseball.
So October is when you put it in full gear. What teams are you kind of keeping up with? If kind of any of the ones that you still that you played for, excuse me, that you played for, or do you kind of just pick and choose whatever game is happening at that time?
Well, I've got seven to choose from that I played with,
Yeah.
but I really have my eye on the Padres this year. That's who I played with the longest, and they seem to have an exciting young team with a lot of talent. I think that they could do a lot of great things. I've still got some buddies on the Cardinals, and so I keep an eye on them as well. But I'm just kind of a baseball fan in general. I don't really have a favorite team.
So you're a reliever, came out of a lot of bullpens in your time. As a reliever yourself, you look at these bullpens, Scott, 10 years removed. What are you thinking when you watch these bullpens? Because I mean, there's guys coming out throwing, 97 consistently. Every guy comes out throwing 97 with like a 92-mile-an-hour slider and another pitch and another pitch. It's crazy. So what are you thinking when you watch these bullpens?
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I'm thinking, back in my day, I'm going to talk like one of the old washed up has-beens, but 95 was pretty special. And nowadays, 95 barely gets you in the door. Like you say, everybody's throwing 100. It's pretty impressive. I think the other thing to remember is that I had a pitching coach that once used to say, big league hitters can time a rocket ship. I mean, they're good enough that they're going to figure it out. So it's more to me about how you change speeds, how you locate the ball, how you execute, especially your secondary and tertiary pitches in key situations. So what I love is watching guys in those situations where I used to come in the seventh and eighth innings with a game on the line, runners on base, one maybe two outs, and really having to bear down and thrive in those pressure situations.
Yeah, for sure. And so is baseball in a better place now than it was when you played in the 2000s? I know you kind of went through the era of, big hitters, but those guys all hit for average too, and I know batting average has kind of been devalued, but now we see the three true outcomes with the walk, the home run, the strikeout. Uh, as a whole, is baseball in a better place now with talent, or was it, or has it kind of taken a step back? What do you think?
I think the game is always going to evolve, and I think that's a credit to the game that it can survive. Different eras. You hear about the dead ball era, you hear about the era of the pitcher, the home run era, the steroid era. I think there's some great young talent right now. It's exciting. I mean, I was having that conversation just the other day when you look at guys like, Acuna, Tatis, of course, Trout, Harper. I mean, there's some exciting guys playing baseball right now, and honestly, I wouldn't know, probably half of the guys that are out there, really developing and growing, having great seasons. But I'm confident that the game is going to survive any era. It's going to be a little bit different. I think it's unfair to compare from one era to the next, if guys would have been able to survive or thrive in this era versus that. I think everybody does what they need to do to adapt and survive in whatever environment that they're in. And I think that's what makes elite athletes. I think that that all of these guys, myself included, had to figure it out pretty quickly how to adapt and adjust and be successful, and then duplicate and replicate. And if you don't, you're going to be gone pretty quick. So all of these guys are certainly thriving and doing things that they have to do in their own environment. The game is incredibly fast. Sometimes the further away you get from the game, you feel like it slows down. But when you get right up to it, and even in the game, you realize how fast of a game, how fast paced it is. So yeah, it's still fun for me to watch, fun to see different things happening. The thing I'm asking myself is, when are hitters going to start adjusting to the shift? Because it just seems like there's a shift on. They're giving up an entire side of the field, and I think good hitters will make adjustments and hit to the other side of the field and force the fielders back to play them a little bit more balanced. But in a lot of cases, I don't see that happening. So I'm just wondering, how long this is going to last.
Oh, we've asked that question for years, so I guess I guess we'll see before maybe it gets banned. Who knows? Did you see the discussion? And I just thought of this just now. Did you see the discussion about possibly moving the mound back to 61 feet 6 inches? Because I feel like all these rules are, benefiting the hitter, and there's no rules at all benefiting the pitcher. Because if you think about it historically, pitchers had a great season in 1968, and what do? They lowered the mound. So every time, pitchers dominate, it's always blamed on the pitchers, and the pitchers get the brunt of it with new rules that don't benefit them. So what do you think about like the possibility of a mound being moved back, even a foot?
I would definitely not be in favor of that. I don't think that, what last year or 2 years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, because last year was a shortened season, but we set the record for home runs, and we broke the record like in mid-September with still a half a month to play. So I don't think you're seeing an unfair advantage by any means on behalf of the pitcher. And, again, the comment I just made, the fact that baseball has survived, since Abner Doubleday, back in the 1870s or whatever it was. And the great thing about it is the dimensions have, stayed the same for the most part. I don't know that there ever was a specified height that the mound had to be. And I even noticed going from ballpark to ballpark, I mean, there was noticeable differences sometimes in the height of the mound. You went to Pro Player Stadium down in Miami, it felt like that thing was 1.5 feet tall. And then you go to Cincinnati and it felt like it was 6 inches tall. So I know they say that they had specifications that they followed on the height, but it seemed like it varied a lot. But as far as the distance to the plate, that's always been the same. And I think it's exactly equidistant from home to second. So are you gonna move second base back too? I mean, you can't go messing with the dimensions of the game.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So Scott Linebrink, healthy Scott Linebrink, in his prime, would you be able to compete? And I know you mentioned that good players can adjust to any era because they just figure out a way to do it. But healthy Scott Linebrink in a big league bullpen, would you be able to get outs today?
Well, not yeah. I mean, if you were to take myself from, let's say, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and
not
put
now
me in today, yeah, I couldn't right now, mainly because I had shoulder surgery about 3 months ago. But yeah, I think I could figure something out.
Yeah, good answer. So let's get into your career a little bit real quick. Grew up in Austin, Texas. We could notice the drawl there, the southern drawl. Drafted in the second round out of Texas State by the Giants in 1997. I've heard so many stories about how guys find out that they get drafted, and it's always interesting. And they usually find out after a college game or something. And now I guess you watch it on TV, and guys are having big parties with all their family around. So how did you kind of find out that you were drafted in the second round?
Yeah, well, this is how far I go back. This was before the days of cell phones, and so I had heard anything from first round to 15th round, and who knows, something might happen. We slip through. We don't even get drafted the first day, because the draft lasted multiple days, at least two. So I didn't even want to be sitting around waiting, and what if the call doesn't come in right away? What if we wait all afternoon? What if we don't even get a call the first day? I didn't want to do that. So I told my buddies, I said, we're going to go play golf. And so we went out and played golf. And I think we made the turn after the first nine. And I said, man, I'm going to call home and just see if anything's happened. Because obviously it was on the front of my mind. So I called, and my mom was just screaming in the other end of the phone. She's like, you're probably the 100th person to know that you got drafted. But I got drafted in the second round by the Giants, and of course, it was a huge deal. Me and my buddies celebrated out there on the golf course, and I don't even think I remember playing the back nine. But then coming home, everybody was coming over to the house. There was an impromptu party. Just a lot of people from my childhood, and congratulations, and people just the signs up in the yard. I mean, it was just a blast, and it was really cool to celebrate with a lot of the people that helped to get me there too, coaches, and of course my parents and friends. So that was an exciting time. And then we had an all-out party like a week later, an official party. And then I guess about 2 weeks later, I was off to my first minor league city.
So you started off as a starting pitcher at the minor league level. We see the adjustment all the time now with guys that started off as starting pitchers and moved to the bullpen. So you made that move, and I talked to Russ Ortiz, who kind of had it the other way. He started off as a closer in Oklahoma and then transitioned into the rotation. How tough is that move mentally, kind of getting moved out of the rotation as a young player and getting into more of a bullpen role?
Well, I think it really depends on the individual, how you're built, what your makeup looks like. For me, I couldn't stand the downtime in between the starts. And even in college, as a starter, you're coming in as a late inning guy usually in those midweek games, and then you're starting on the weekends. So there was always an opportunity to be in a game in professional baseball. You're on a regimented schedule, and you're pitching every fifth day. You got those 4 days in between, and especially if you had a bad start, it was really hard to wait 4 or 5 days until you got to that next start. So I think I was more suited for the bullpen, and it was really something that I gravitated into because of the shoulder injuries that I had had. They were trying to limit my innings, but it ended up being a really good fit because I love the idea of being out there every night, having a chance to get in the game. If you do have a bad game, hey, brush it off. You'll be back out there the next night. So I think I was well suited for that, and I love strapping it on every night and being out there.
100% agree, because I made the move too in high school. I was a starting pitcher, and I ended up moving to the bullpen my junior year, and it goes from them telling you that you're on Tuesday. They tell you on Tuesday, hey, you're starting Thursday, and then you got to deal with it through class, and it's on your mind for a few days, and it definitely could take a toll. So behind the scenes stuff here, you were traded a few times, and how does that process actually work to, explain it to someone like me who's kind of outside the loop on this kind of stuff? What is the process of getting traded? Is it like a gut punch? Is it, hey, new beginnings, let's get off to a fresh start? How do you find out, and how does the process work?
Well, each trade is different, I would say. I mean, I think I was traded 3 times, and in some cases, I was really excited about the trade. It was a chance the first time I got traded to go from San Francisco to the Astros, a team that I grew up rooting for. Um, so I was excited about that one. The second trade, I was less than excited because I was with a team, San Diego, that I had been with for 5 years and really established myself. My wife and I had put down some roots. We were to have our first child, which created some logistical challenges, and going to a place like Milwaukee, where it was like my wife even asked, I don't even know what state Milwaukee's in. So it's and you're all of a sudden one day you're living in Southern California, the next day you're living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So and you're trying to find housing and figure all this out with a new baby. So that was tough, and that makes you realize that you need a good supporting staff around you to make sure that you're taking care of all that home stuff. And then on top of that, you're worried about fitting in with a new team. What's my role? Your routine often gets disrupted because you've got a different weight room, a different training staff. It's just a lot of stuff to get used to, especially in the middle of the season. The third trade was in the off season. So I had the benefit of coming in to spring training and getting to know the guys. It was just like signing with a new team and being there from the beginning. And that was to Atlanta. So I really enjoyed my time in Atlanta. We had a great team that year, a lot of strong relationships, guys that I still keep in touch with today. So really, it depends, I guess I'd have to say, because some of those trades bring about new beginnings and you're excited, and some of them are kind of a departure from what you're most comfortable with. But I would say in any case, the fact that you are being traded is always a good thing because somebody wants you.
Yeah, 100%. I can't imagine, going anywhere from San Diego, and, because San Diego is such a nice town. It's such a great weather. So that must have been a weird transition going to Milwaukee. What about getting called up and called back down? This is a struggle that a lot of players early in their careers have with options. And we hear all the time about, oh, he's got an option left, we could send him down. Getting shifted back and forth from AAA and the big leagues must be like the toughest thing, I'd imagine, on a young player, with housing and finding an apartment. And I asked Chris Shaw, who is a former Giants prospect, this, and he said that he rented an apartment with four guys, and all four of them got called up, and he was the only one left in the apartment. So, struggles like that often come out of something like this. So what was it like for you, kind of getting shifted up and down at the beginning of your career?
Yeah, it definitely plays a toll on your psyche. And, in some cases you get called up and sent back down just because that's the nature of the beast. That's the numbers game with the roster. You mentioned the options, guys that have options, it's much easier to move them up and down. You don't have to risk losing them to the waiver wire. So, and it's explained like that. And, I would say early on, I was just glad to get the opportunity to be called up. And so going back down, it was almost like, okay, I can go back to where it's comfortable. There's not all this like craziness and 40,000 people every night. I mean, I can just relax and go play minor league ball. Now, once you get called up a couple times, you realize that, hey, riding on the chartered planes are a whole lot better than the buses, and the cities are a lot bigger up in the big leagues versus the minor leagues. And there's a whole lot of perks. So yeah, you definitely want to get back up there. And I think for a little while, that really became my focus. Is I got to do whatever I can to get back up to the big leagues, and I don't want to be stuck down here. And you can really start to, it can affect your performance when you start to look at, well, it's just a minor league game, or it's just the minor leagues. And you kind of take a different approach versus, hey, this is baseball. I've got to excel at this level, just like I do at the big league level. I've got a team that is depending on me here, just like they are up there. And so you really can't, look at it as like a second class job. I mean, this is your job. You gotta remember why you're here. You're here to get better. You're here to develop, and you're here to get called up and go to the next level. So, it definitely was something that I had to learn, had to deal with, and really, I think in the end, it just developed a lot of mental fortitude and making sure that I was going to be able to handle some of the other challenges that would come with the big league job too.
Back to playing in San Diego, a big part of their bullpen for a few years there. What kind of clicked once you got there? Because that was kind of your spot where you kind of broke out in a way.
It was. I think a lot of it came with opportunity, just getting a chance to go out there. It was a team that we were at or near the bottom of the division, so not a whole lot of expectations. San Diego back then was a much smaller market, and it was really just a place where I could go out and play. I think if I had, come into the league, and San Francisco was a decent size, Houston a little bit bigger, but I couldn't imagine starting in like a Yankees or New York or Chicago type environment. But I kind of had to ease my way into it. I had to convince myself that I had what it takes to compete at that level. And so getting a chance to do that in San Diego, I think really um, allowed me to just get reps, go out there and see what I needed to do to be successful. I had the benefit of being around some great bullpen guys like Trevor Hoffman and Rod Beck, who taught me a lot about the approach to the game, the mental side of the game. They were always asking me questions, and I was always afraid of not having an answer. So it kept me thinking about, hey, what do I do in this situation? Or why would I throw that pitch here? What am I trying to accomplish? So yeah, I think it was a great learning opportunity for me. And again, just a chance to really sink in and say, okay, I belong here. I can do this. And then of course, San Diego, the next year we got the new stadium. So we had more fans, new uniform. It just felt like it was almost like going from the minor leagues to the big leagues. And then, I think that prepared me well for when I played in Chicago, which was a much bigger stage or media environment than it was in San Diego.
Yeah, Trevor Hoffman he was the guy that was the all-time saves leader, of course, before Mariano Rivera. And you said you learned a lot. He asked you questions. What were some of the things you admired and learned from Hoffman watching him?
Well, I don't think anybody has greater passion for the game and just his craft than Trevor did. He was always working, always improving himself, very meticulous about his routine, and everything that he did had a reason. There was nothing done out of circumstance. There was nothing done just, because he wanted to do it. There was always a reason for why he did it. And from a mental side too, he would talk about, pushing aside the bad thoughts. He would do things, physically to remind himself that, that's a bad thought, and any bad thought doesn't have any place here. It's counterproductive to what I'm trying to do, so I'm going to get rid of it. And he was incredibly focused. He would go out there and there was no wasted energy. So even playing catch, there was a purpose to playing catch. There was a purpose to warming up. There was a purpose to his workout, his running. He was always challenging himself. I remember early on we would go for runs, and he loved to go out. We would always take cab money, and we would just run in one direction, and then we'd catch a cab and we'd turn around and ride back, because he didn't want to run the same thing twice. He always wanted to see new things. So we would, in Seattle, we'd run down to the wharf, and out in LA, we'd be, running out around Dodger Stadium. But everything was always a challenge. I remember, at the end of the run, we'd have the last, whatever it was, half a mile, and he would be hollering out, all right, it's 2-2 count, 2 outs, got to run on third, got to make this pitch, and he's putting ourselves in a game situation when we're tired, when we're ready to quit, and he's, picking up the pace. And what I realized now that he was doing was, he was making me realize that when it feels like your tank is empty, when it feels like you're done, you've got a lot more to give. And that's exactly when you need to pick it up and take it up a notch, up another level, in order to get that last out. So, that served well out there at 7:00 when the big lights came on too.
Yeah, one of the best changeups in the history of baseball for sure. And your manager was a guy that just retired last year, a Hall of Famer, Bruce Bochy. I mean, I don't think anybody I've ever heard interview say a bad thing about him. I mean, the guy is just a true legend of the game. What were kind of your memories and thoughts for playing for Bruce?
Yeah, Boch was awesome. He just like a big grizzly bear, and he had like he was real quiet. I remember the first few months that I played for him, I didn't even know if he knew my name or if he liked me. I mean, he hardly said a word to me, but he was kind of one of those guys that you just really aim to please. And you know, the other thing too that I realized that the more I played for him is that he was a good leader because he always wanted to put people in a position to succeed. And he knew what everybody's strength was. And so, I saw him just get really upset and lament with players, whenever they didn't do well. I mean, he wasn't mad at them for not executing or not making a pitch or not getting a hit in a key situation. He felt for them because he was a player himself. He was a catcher. I mean, he was a grinder. He sat in that same seat that we did, and he knew how hard the game was, and he honestly wanted to see everybody succeed. And so, when you got a guy like that that cares about you as a person and wants you to succeed, there's nothing you won't do for him. And so I felt that way about Boch, and I would put Boch right up there with my favorites.
Did you ever call him Bruce, or was it just solely Boch?
I think it was always Boch. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never.
Um,
I called him Bruce earlier, and I just realized, God, does anybody call him that? so, so it's Boch.
Yeah, Boch, everybody knows he had like a size 8.5 head, might have been 8 3/4. I mean, just a giant head. He's just a big man in general. But I still remember being out there. I loved the Philly Fanatic, and I would always go out early to watch the Philly Fanatic, and he would just crack me up. And I was like the only guy in the dugout. Nobody else had come out yet. And so, sometimes he'd see me over there and he would, do stuff. And I remember one time Boch was out there with me, and he starts making fun of Boch, and he's doing this skit where like his head is too big and he's like it's too heavy and it's weighing him down and he's falling over because his head's so big. And I was down at the end of the dugout just horse laughing at this, and Boch is just sitting there like with his hands on his hips looking at me like, you kidding me?
I would have been laughing
But
too.
he was a guy that could laugh at himself too. So self-deprecating humor is always an admirable quality.
Yeah, getting to watch him for 10, 11, 12 years in San Francisco. We saw exactly what you're talking about with the bullpen, with the manipulation of using guys in the right spot, and it got him 3 championships. So he did something right, and he's definitely heading for Cooperstown for sure. So then after San Diego, you got the multi-year deal with the White Sox, and a lot of people, a lot of players, could hypothetically just relax after that, right? Is that the case, or is there still a lot of motivation to kind of live up to the contract? Because there's one of two things you could do. You could either feel comfortable with the contract and relax and maybe turn into a different person, or you could live up to that. You could try and live up to that contract and be afraid of you know people hating you for getting paid all that money and not coming through. So what was your mindset of having that multi-year deal?
Well, one thing you have to remember is no matter what the money situation is, you have a job to do, and your task is there regardless of whatever you're getting paid. So the same drive that keeps us excelling and wanting to get to the major leagues keeps us wanting to stay in the major leagues. And I think that's just a product of, hey, I can do something that only a handful of people in the world can do. And I want to continue to prove that I can do it. And so the money is really should be a byproduct. And, of course, there's things that come with the money that might make it a little easier, or, you start to feel that you can provide for a lot longer. There's a lot more certainties, not just for this year, but next year and for your kids and for the future. So that part of it is nice, the financial security. But I would say, for me, it probably had quite the opposite effect of what you're talking about, that, I never felt like I could relax. I felt like because I'm being paid more, because I'm being expected to perform in this high high impact role, that I need to produce. I mean, I'm obviously being expected to produce because they're paying me to. And so sometimes living up to expectations can put you in a trap in itself. I think for me, I'm a man of faith. And so, when I talk about identity, my identity comes not from the fact that I am a baseball player, but that I'm a child of God. And so for me, maintaining that focus was critical, for remembering, what I'm out there to do, what is my purpose, my overall purpose in life. And it's something I still think about to this day.
Who's the best player that you've ever played with? That's a tough question. You've played with a lot of great talent. Who's the best one?
With Jim Thome.
Jim Thome.
600
Why?
home runs. Well, he's up there among the biggest home run hitters. Played for 22 years. One of the best guys that you will ever meet. Just a humble guy. Probably will someday be a big league manager. Just loves the game of baseball. But beyond that, just a great person. Loves to give back. Loves to use his platform to serve other people. And he was the one guy that I would say, when I think back to the guys that I got to play with, wow, I'm really proud that I got to be Jim Thome's teammate.
That's awesome. So shifting gears here, you have a few things over your back shoulder. So on your right side, you have a jersey there. It looks like it's a Nolan Ryan jersey signed. Got 3 signatures on it. Who signed that?
Oh, no, it's just one, but he wrote a little message.
Oh, he wrote a message.
He lives, of course, he's a Texan. He actually lives pretty close to where I live. And so I've had the fantastic opportunity to hang out with him a few times, go to breakfast. We actually spoke at the same engagement at Texas State at my old college. Which was a terrible idea because he spoke first and then I followed him. Like, how in the world do I follow Nolan Ryan? He's my childhood hero. So that was intimidating in itself. But yeah, Nolan is the epitome of just the power pitcher, the high leg kick. I always tried to imitate it when I was a kid. And just incredible what he was able to do. Pitched till he's 46 years old. It's just I don't think we will ever see another Nolan Ryan.
Superhuman for sure. And what's on your left-hand shoulder? Tell us about that.
So, yeah, this is actually a picture from a refugee camp, and it's in Tanzania in Africa. And after my playing career, I got involved with an organization called Water Mission, and this is who I work for now. I've worked for them for the last 6 years. So. I would say my 2 biggest employers are Major League Baseball and now Water Mission. So it's really been the focus of my life for the last 6 years or more. We actually had a relationship with them before I went to work for them. But basically, this group is going around the world into impoverished communities, third world countries, and putting in water systems for refugee areas, camps of tens, hundreds of thousands of people, rural communities that are outside of major population centers that don't have any kind of water or sanitation services. And so we're coming in and we're drilling wells and putting in pumps and distribution networks so that people can access water. And I've had the neat opportunity to travel around the world, all over Latin America, been to Africa now. I'm going to be heading down to Peru this November to see a project down there, and I just enjoy taking people into the field and seeing the work. One, because it's a fantastic way to give back. If you want to talk about what are some basic needs of people, it doesn't get much more basic than water, and to be able to provide sustainable, reliable water for people. Just has tremendous impacts on education and health and empowerment for women and children, opportunities for youth. It just all flows from water. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity to do that, and have invited several of my friends, several guys that are in the game, and they come on these trips, and it's really just a life-changing experience once you get to go and see it.
So this was something you were involved in when you were playing too?
No, it actually came after my playing career. And I was told about it by a good friend of mine, and he suggested that I check them out. And we got involved financially, which is good, but I would say the engagement really took it to a new level whenever I went to on my first trip, which was to Haiti, and saw what poverty looked like. And of course, living in our world, but especially, in a big league lifestyle, I mean, that's not even reality. And to think about the things that we take for granted, the things that we feel like we're entitled to, and you go to these other places and they don't have any of that, and they're very grateful even for the most basic things. And it's taught me so much. It's taught me that, if you're going to be grateful for the things that you have, you really realize that you're entitled to nothing, and that, we rejoice at the things that we have that are just, the simplest things. But we also, I find that you start to ask yourself, well, why have I been given this? Why do I have this when someone on the other side of the world, can't even feed their kids? Well, I think there's a calling to each one of us to be generous, and I think that's how, we really find true joy in our lives, is by giving to others, and not on doing things for yourself. I mean, we often are fooled into the sense of belief that, hey, if I could just buy this, or if I could just have a bigger house, or I could have another car, a vacation, I'll be happy. But none of that stuff ever satisfies us. But man, when you give back to someone else, and you know that you've made an impact in their life and a difference that they otherwise would not have had, I mean, there's great joy in that. And the saying is true: it's better to give than receive.
So this is a loaded question, but I was just thinking that the most popularized and the most well-known situation of, lack of water or lack of good water in the United States is Flint, Michigan. And,
Mm.
this is something that we've heard about for a while now. And so how is something like this fixed? How does the water mission, you know, help with this? What are some of the options in Flint, Michigan?
Yeah, Flint, Michigan is a tough case. And it's a very unfortunate case because so many people have been exploited in that situation. Really, what that comes down to, and I don't want to get too political into this, but it comes down to it's bad leadership, is what it
Mhm.
is. Because the reason that they are in that problem in the first place is because there was a change made to the water system that some people knew was not going to be beneficial. And unfortunately, it often impacts people of less economic means, and that's what happened in the case of Flint. And you had, people in power that were not looking out for the best interest of others, and that's very sad. It's sad to see good people, hardworking people, taken advantage of like that. So, but that's a rare instance. I mean, a lot of times when you see a water crisis in the United States, it's because of a disaster, natural disaster. But we have so many resources nearby that, typically we can pick up the slack for something, pretty quickly. But I tell you, there's a place out west in the Navajo Nation. 40% of their homes don't have water, and
Wow.
they've been hit very hard by COVID. And so we've been doing, looking at ways that maybe we can help out in that area. But yeah, there are pockets of places that are underserved. And the thing about this water crisis is the technology exists to help anybody. I mean, there's not a contaminant known to man that cannot be removed from water and make it safe to drink. We have the technology to do that. We have so many ways that we can do that. Really, it just comes down to, resources. Can we involve enough people? Can we get enough resources together to provide for people that can't really provide for themselves or don't have the means? But there are resources available to do that. We've just got to inspire. We've got to mobilize, and we've got to develop a plan and a strategy to get water to people, not just in places like Flint, Michigan, but all around the world.
How has COVID impacted the organization? Because I know, COVID has been the talk of 2020 and I guess early 2021 here. And I'm sure you guys have had to make some changes with the way you do things. So how has kind of COVID impacted the organization with the water mission?
Yeah, it's in some ways it allowed us to trim some fat, and in other ways it made us realize our strengths. You know, the training and the hand washing that we do is so important. We do it in every project. We don't just provide water, but we teach people how to use water for healthy living. And so we have started putting in hand washing stations in addition to our water projects. We have had to, make adjustments to the way that we mobilize in country. We have country offices in 9 different countries. So, places like Mexico and Peru for a while, we're only allowed to operate at about a 20% capacity. Places like Africa did not get hit as hard as what we saw in China and Europe and the United States. So luckily for that, we're very grateful that that wasn't as big of an issue as it could have been. But all of the social distancing and the things we still practice and maintain, but it just goes to show that safe water is a huge need, and you can't wash your hands if you don't have safe water. And I keep saying safe water. We call water that is free of contaminants, that has no chance to make you sick. There's nothing in that. It would meet U.S. drinking water standards. That's what we call safe water.
That's great stuff. And I think it's very inspirational to people that want to get involved. Again, it's the Water Mission. And you have a new podcast that you just started. So tell me about that venture.
Yeah, so it's partly come out of my work with Water Mission, and really what it was all about was giving guys that I used to play with and guys that are still in the game today an opportunity to talk about the things that they're truly passionate about. We all love to hear about the story behind athletes. What do they look like off the field? What are the things that they're involved in? So I just really want to create a forum where they can talk about some of those things. And I truly believe, I believe in this generosity thing. I believe in giving, and I believe that, being involved in something bigger than yourself is the answer to, a lot of narcissistic behavior, a lot of, guys that get caught up in depression and self-destructive behavior, because that is unfortunately the case for a lot of guys after the game. And so I feel like, getting involved in some of these things where we can go out and help other people is probably one of the best remedies for some of the destructive behavior. So I find it to be inspiring for myself to hear these guys talk about what really motivates them and how they want to help people. And I hope that it motivates others too. The podcast is called Get in the Game. And so really it's talking about what it means to live a life of service. And I mentioned my faith earlier. My faith is something that is very important to me. It's something that teaches me that, to whom much has been given, much is expected. And so this is a chance to talk about, how we, myself and other ball players are giving back. And we tell some baseball stories too. There's some fun banter at the beginning, and the conversations have been really rewarding for me, but I think a lot of people will latch on to them as well. And you can get the podcast anywhere, Apple, Spotify. Just go to Get in the Game or search my name.
Yeah, talk about how to start a podcast. Your first 4 guests: Dodgers manager Dave Roberts, former left-hander for the Yankees Andy Pettitte, Trevor Hoffman, and Jim Thome. So that's a way to start. So congrats on that. Congrats on that endeavor. Congrats on the Water Mission. And congrats, of course, on a great big league career. Scott Linebrink, thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Stephen, and way to go with your podcast. Hey, how to start a podcast? All you need is a microphone and some guys on your contact list, and just call them up, right?
So 100%. I appreciate the time, Scott. You guys can follow us on Twitter at RizzoCast, Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast, and of course, on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else, YouTube, everywhere else you find your podcast. And you could have it right there on your library next to Get in the Game with Scott Linebrink. So get that done, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching, and have a great day.